So this is a manga that I really like the idea and the execution, but unfortunately it's not yet completed, and in some instances I hope it stays that way. Hello everyone, welcome to the Weeb Initiative. I'm your host, TWI. This is the show where every other week I'll be talking about anime, manga, and everything in between. This week I'll be talking about changing a bit of the normal anime review. This time I'll be talking about a manga that I really like, Black Lagoon. Before I start, some disclaimers. I'll be talking about just the manga, not the anime. I did not watch the anime as of yet, and probably won't. Really, the anime doesn't cover as much as the manga. And also, and for those who already know the fact matter, who already know Black Lagoon, the manga is, as of the date of recording, not completed. The 13th volume is yet to come out, though the chapters may be online already available if you look hard enough. The 13th volume is still to be released, I think in October 2024, and for the foreseeable future we don't actually know if it will continue or not. Hopefully it will, but for the most part it is a work in progress. Why am I doing the review now? Is because I just caught up to it, and for the most part, if I don't do this review now, I probably will miss the timing of me having all this, not only thoughts but feelings about the series in me right now, because we don't actually know when the next volume will come out, even after the 13th. So for all that's worth, the review is being done now rather than later. And for that matter, I will review what I can see, so until the 12th volume, and that's about it. I will not be talking much about the spoilers. I will basically glance over some stuff and allude to some of the themes and stuff that happens, and I think the very few starting arcs, let's say, that I think the anime covers as well, so you may be spoiled a bit, but at the same time I think it's more foundational, and in some instances more or less doesn't actually change the experience. I think, as I will talk more about later, this is more a series about the journey rather than the conclusion, the ending. So with that, let's talk about the stats. So Black Lagoon is originally a manga written by Hiroe Rei. I think I'm pronouncing this right? Hiroe, I think it's the surname. It started publishing in 2002, April 2002, and is still going as of 2024. There was the light novel in 2008 to 2011 with 2 volumes, some spin-off mangas, one that came out in 2019 and one in 2022, and the titular anime that came out through April 2006 to December 2006 with 24 episodes, made by Madhouse. Also there was 5 OVAs also done by Madhouse that came out in 2010 to 2011, so July 2010 to June 2011, that covers one whole arc of one of the let's say, I will not say guest characters, but it's one of the more or less until that point recurring characters. So with that done, let's start with the story. So what is Black Lagoon about? So Black Lagoon is, Black Lagoon is about a group of people that work in the Lagoon transport company. I may fumble a bit of the names, but that's just a translation / me not remember exactly the right stuff. So this is a story about a group of people that work at the Lagoon shipping company, transport company, whatever. For the uninitiated, so Black Lagoon takes place in a fictional town in, I think, Thailand, called Roanapur, and it is basically the end of the world. So it is really, let's say, the modern Wild West, The story takes place in 1995, 1996. I don't actually remember if they give an actual date to it, but it is mid-90s. So they try to actually give more of a style of the mid-90s rather than modern late 2000s. This was originally written in 2002, so you can understand the idea of the timing this takes place. So you see that nobody has cell phones, nobody has anything modern really. The TVs are CRTs and so on and so forth. That being said, the most important stuff is that Ranapur is really basically lawless city in the middle of Thailand with crime running about. Things just, not that they don't work, but they are controlled by, let's say, the mafia and oligarchy of mafias, let's say. I'll talk more about this a bit later. So, but first I need to talk about the characters. So the Lagoon company is composed at the very start of 3 people: Dutch, the boss; Benny, the hackerman and second in command, more or less; and Ravi, the, how can you say that, the bodyguard or the gun person. Mostly she's the main shooter slash killer of the group. So, and basically they do a whole lot of work in the shipping space for a lawless city, so you can imagine they dabble into some, let's say, legally gray areas of shipping stuff and transporting random things. But that's basically the setup for the whole show. The one thing that you see in this whole series is that everybody is a bit, let's say, morally ambiguous when it comes to it, and the whole thing basically is run for survival in this lawless city, lawless place. Basically, we'll see throughout the whole story that survival is one of the main things that permeate all the inhabitants of this one place. But for the first arc, let's say, where we get introduced to our last main character, is when they are actually transporting or trying to steal and transport a CD coming from Japan. The CD contains confidential information about some companies and some kind of, I don't actually remember if they give too much of context to it, but basically it is people embezzling money from the government, and if this comes out, a lot of people will get fired and so on and so forth. In the midst of it, they kidnap one of the employees that's carrying the CD, Okajima Rokuro, who is a straight-laced guy. He plays by the rules and so on and so forth, but he's your normal person interacting with what would be the equivalent of, let's say, modern pirates. And so the whole thing is, he is kidnapped, he cries his lungs out and pleads for his life, the whole 9 yards that you would think someone would do in that situation. But at the end of the day, and this is a thing that we get from the very start, the Lagoon Company specifically, they don't actually kill people that they don't actually need to. And for one, they took him as a hostage, as leverage, so they don't actually plan to kill him. And this comes really early. They are pretty straight about it, and so the whole thing kind of begins with even though they kidnapped him, it becomes a bit more friendly, the relationship, in a way that they start to actually talk it out and kind of, I would not say socialize, but they understand a bit in a later moment, right? So they kidnap him and get out, run away a bit, and in a later moment when they actually are still transporting the CD, they have a second encounter with the boat that they stole from, and they have an interaction with Rokuro's bosses, and basically they throw him out and resign him to his death. And obviously he doesn't take this really well. They basically tell him by satellite phone that he's basically written off dead for the company and his family as of that moment. And so he basically, from that point on, he's dead, but he's dead to the outer world. And this is where we get the first example of what the series basically talks about, right? So there is the difference between a person in a personal level and a person to society or the group at large, let's say. So he's written off as dead, and they declare him dead and so on and so forth. But with the help of the Lagoon company, at this point, we see the connection between him and Rev kind of getting better. Never really gets to the point that it is romantic. Even in the later chapters, it doesn't actually get romantic. It kind of gets close, but it never really gets to the point where you can confirm to the fact that there is a romantic connection there. And I think that it is basically a conscious choice of the author to not get it romantic. Otherwise, the cohesion of the group would be kind of compromising in a certain way. But what's important here is that Rokuro basically survives the encounter. He is written off dead in Japan, where he's from, but he's still alive, and for the most part he dodges a few hitmen that his bosses hired to get the CD and finish him off, to basically tie loose ends. But then Ravi, Dutch, and Benny help him to avoid that. One important thing that it is, I think, kind of not really pivotal. It doesn't actually change much in the ongoing of the story, but it is a detail that needs to be carried out throughout the reading of this, is that Rokuro, after his, let's say, he is declared dead, he basically is renamed by his nickname Rock. He never kills anyone. And that's important to say, that he has still a connection to the outside world. And I'll talk more about this later. But the whole thing is, the first arc is we meeting the first 3 members of the Lagoon company, and then meeting Rock and his situation, where basically he is declared dead, but he's, as a person, not dead. He's dead for society at large. From this point on, we get into some other arcs. We go through a whole lot of arcs. The first, I think, 3 arcs, it is to set up the world around our main characters. So we have these 4 characters, and we have this white canvas where they need to live on. So we see that Benny actually is the second in command. He does navigation when they are out at sea, and is somewhat of a hacker man for the group. Revi is famous for her marksmanship. She uses 2 custom berettas that she calls scimitars, and it is a really nice thing that they do with all the guns in this series, where it's really well drawn, really well researched, that all the guns that appear, they feel really 90s, really, and not only that, but they fit the location they're in. So it feels like those weapons are smuggled through to that location. So you have to think like we are in the end of Thailand, really far off any other civilization. It is, the city itself is a unknown point for the normal person, and the guns that appear there, the people that appear there, they are really just bottom of the barrel, down to their luck in most cases, or really desperate people looking for something that it is only there. And as the series progresses, we see that the city is important as the people that are in it. So we get to meet the members of what they call the council. There is basically a group of different mafias that take care of Ranapur. So basically we get to meet also the chief of police that is, let's say, in the pocket of this council. And so we get to see that basically the council is the controlling body for most people. The Lagoon Traders Company is, let's say, an outside force. They are not aligned to any of the mafias specifically, but they do assorted work for every one of them. They try to keep all relationships friendly, and for the most part, all the relationships that we see for the most part is friendly, even though there is normal attrition between them from time to time. Some specific individuals are more prone to conflict than others, and we see this really fine line that they live in, where each of the mafias takes care of one different business, and the whole thing kind of works out in somewhat of a organized system, even though it's a lawless place and so on and so forth. The mafias, they are important, and I think for some are the most important part of this. So we have the main guy in control for the most part, the guy that talks the most at the very least, is Mr. Chang. Mr. Chang is the main boss of the triads, so he's from Hong Kong, and he controls the Chinese mafia, let's say, for the Chinese mafia part of Ronapur. The other one is Ronnie, the Jaws, or Ronald. He's with the Italian mafia, so his whole entourage is Italians. They take their orders from Italy and take care of their own operations there. And the third factor and the one that I think resonates the most or hits the most with people, and the author himself in interviews, he talks a lot about it, is the Russians. And they have this distinctive name of Hotel Moscow. They are led by Captain Balalaika, who is this woman who, if she had not been to the war, I think they mention Afghanistan, I think. She has a huge scar like Avatar's The Last Airbender Zuko style, but throughout her face, it's pretty grim. But after some time, you see her enough times, it kind of becomes part of the character, more or less. She is a really hard-hitting character. She has a lot of personality, not only on writing, but I hear that in the anime also, it hits really hard the way she talks. Not only that, but she's always with a cigar. It's pretty... You can see the influence there, the whole thing with the mafias, all the characters, they have of influence with the movies of the 90's, and it is one of the things that makes this really a special kind of series, that they take influences and where in their sleeves the influences, and still it feels kind of fresh, even though you know that you already seen that somewhere. It feels really fresh the way the author writes his stories and writes his characters. Balalaika, in that fact, she's the captain of a whole group of ex-Russian military. So her whole unit as the, let's say, Russian mob in Ronapur are ex-military, and so she takes care of a lot of problems through force. So they don't measure any effort to go somewhere, kick the door down, and just blast the guy with AKs. It's really in the way they do kind of things. It's a personality trait that comes out through their actions. Balalaika, and by proxy her sergeants, let's say. I don't know. The whole thing kind of fits really well together. And from that point on, we get to see some recurring side characters. So there's the one old dude that basically made Ravi's guns. We get to meet Bao, who is the guy on the bar, that's the owner of the bar, that the bar upstairs of the bar is actually how do you say that nowadays, a Borto. And the whole city kind of starts to build itself throughout the many encounters they have, and each of the arcs that come after the first one is basically they are presented with some kind of problem that happens inside of Ronapur, or they get involved somehow, because there are, I think, one or two instances where they go out of Ronapur to other places to actually get things done. but for the most part, it is all inside the city, and the main thing is when some outsider appears, people start to basically chit chat about it, and so the bosses of the console get kind of to know that, and when people start dying is when they actually get involved. And for the most part, when they get involved is when shit hits the fan and the tensions really get high, and the whole thing kind of goes really, really well together. So there is always this first encounter, then there is some kind of thing that involves not only the council but also the Lagoons. In most of the time is Rock. Rock is by and large the main character of this whole series, even though it is not hard to say that the whole group is important. Rock and Revi, they are both the centerpieces of this. Most times, for the release, the beginning, Revi takes Rock under her wing more as not only protection, but also to teach him how the city and the world of the dead work, because she has this adage that Ruanapur, being such a remote place, some unknown place that people normally don't go to, is the city of the dead. So everybody there is already dead to the world, because this city is nowhere to be found on a map. The normal laws don't affect it, so you see some atrocities there, some things that a normal person would not expect in other places. And so there is this whole build up that they are still in the real world, but in a part that the laws and conventions don't apply really. And from this point on, we get some action scenes, some really nice. I think scripting is one of the best things in this whole manga. The whole thing kind of feels so natural, so nice. The encounters they have with the different arcs are really interesting. One of them is a pair of twins that come from, I think, Romania, and they are actually specialized killers that come after someone, and then the next thing you know, there's a South American maid. I think that is one of the main arcs that actually appear in the anime and is multiple times mentioned in the manga. I think that is just really nice. Maid with guns appears in the town, starts killing people out of nowhere. Nobody knows what the hell she's doing, and when they find out, she basically disappears. It's a whole thing. It's really interesting. So much so that the OVAs are about her, basically. That's the most of spoilers that we'll get here. I'll not talk about what happens, but still. And from that point on, we get so much stuff. There is one where a Chinese hacker comes fleeing from her country and is chased around by guys from different countries, and the whole thing kind of works out from there. Then there's one where a French group comes after someone who did revolution back in 89, and the whole thing kind of really the thing is, right, for the most part, it doesn't matter how much fantasy the idea is, it all feels natural towards the setting. And this is the part of the review where I will talk more about my opinion really without really touching on the manga. So there's this thing, and stay with me on this one. There's this thing when we talk about cyberpunk specifically, and cyberpunk not as a genre itself, but cyberpunk and the franchise cyberpunk, that it doesn't matter if you start with the anime, with the game, with 2077, or with the RPG. The one thing that connects it all is the setting, that is Night City, because in most cases, in all of the cases really, the game, the anime, and if your GM is good enough, the RPG, they will end up being a telling of how the setting changes people, and it is changed by people. And it doesn't matter really the story, but the setting will always be the same, and will always change by the people that are in the story. And for that, what's worth, I think the thing that really comes forward to me when talking about Black Lagoon is this part of the world, this imaginary city that is Ruanapur, that changes people and is changed by people. The amount of world building that they give towards how things work there, how people think there, how everyone changes by going there and is changed by it is a treat. I think the setting is the first thing that really happens. In another way, the story also is so character driven. It doesn't really matter what they're doing, but the characters carry the story forward. Doesn't matter if there is Dutch, if there's Benny, but Revi, Rock for the most part being the main character, but Revi carries so much of the personality of the city because she's such, I think, how can I say that? She's the apex of what Ruanapur is. She's the apex of what Black Lagoon is. She's violent. She has this survival instinct above all. She has this whole life philosophy about surviving, about being the best in her job, how she does her job. But not only that, but also she is, I will not say kind, but she has work etiquette. She has ethic in what she does. She does not kill unnecessarily. Even though she threatens a lot, she doesn't really kill unnecessarily. She does her work measured. Her personality for charisma is really apparent. It comes out to the reader. It's really nice. In the other hand, I will not stay here talking 2 hours about Revi, come on. In the other hand, Rock is a blank slate. There's a whole theming about he being reborn from Rokuro to Rock, and in the way that he is reborn, he changes. So he starts naive and really tied up on his ways, but as time goes on, he meets people, he changes a lot because of people and the environment he's in. He starts to loosen up, become more playful, less stuck up in his ways. He really starts having fun, and this is the thing, right? So this is the environment changing the guy. He actually adapts and starts liking the way he is. So there is this whole theme in the beginning of the series where he wants to go back to his old life. He wants to basically go back to Japan, live out this salaryman life that he has set out for himself, because at that point in the story he's still overwhelmed by the risk and the conditions that he lives in. Because after he is basically reborn as Rock, he starts working for Lagoon and starts putting his life on the line. The one thing that they from the very start hammer in is that they risk their lives every day to do their job, to survive, and then you need to basically live with the risk that you put yourself in. And there's this whole thing where he, through living some of these adventures, he wants to go back to get his life back basically, and at one point he kind of gets the chance to, but it is so much further in. He has lived so much till that point in this new environment in Ruanapur with Revi, Dutch and Benny, with all the people that he met and all the adventures he had, that he sees himself as someone different and finally buries the hatchet on Rokuro. Basically died that one day when he was kidnapped / rescued by Lagoon, and now he's Rock. He has a new life and he has the right to choose how his new life will go. And from that point on, it kind of changes a bit the way he's written. So in this first phase, he's more of a blank slate. He's naive. He talks. He always tries to, let's say, right things wrong. So he wants to basically do the right thing in general, but it doesn't actually work strictly the way he wants. And the thing goes in a way that he develops and sees that nobody can see the world the same way, and everybody has their own circumstances, so he kind of evolves in that way. And so we go through phase 2 that I think that we are still in. I will not say from what volume. I would not be able to pinpoint where the change actually happened. But the second phase basically is Rock as the... how do I say that? I want to say the word influencer, but not in the way that influencer is nowadays. Not like he's a YouTuber, no. He basically wants to be able to change stuff. He wants to... this is a thing that happens a bit later still, but he wants to protect the city and protect the people that he likes, but also he wants to live his life the way he wants. And this comes to the next point that I want to bring. One of the main concepts of this series is freedom, true freedom. So they always bring up this kind of notion through a whole lot of the arcs, is that freedom of choice. So given a certain choice, people can have any number of different paths they take. Either run away, confront it, face it the other way, or so on and so forth. And this is a concept that happens in a whole lot of encounters, and it is really something that, depending on who's reading, I think it will kind of be lost, because for the most part we always look forward to the ending, to where we are going. And I think that, as I talked in the beginning, this series is more about the journey, really, the how we get there, what we see through the way, what we experience to reach the end, more than the ending. And that goes to actually add to the fact that this thing has been going since 2002, and sometimes the author has gone through years without actually writing for it. And for what's worth, this manga is... I'm talking way too much in platitudes. I don't actually think anybody is actually understanding what I'm saying. The thing is, read it and then tell me, what did you think? What do you think of this whole thing? It is bad, it is good. For me, it's one of the better mangas I have picked up in years, because it is an extraordinary example of character development. And this is specifically Rock, he developed himself a lot throughout the series. It is really gradual and really hard to actually get it, but the character development he has is extraordinary. For the most part, everybody else in this city is the same. We may find out different things from different people through the passage of time, but for the most part, the one that actually changes is Rock, and the other ones are basically really well shaped, let's say. All the characters, I think, are really well written. Even characters that die off after one chapter, characters that don't actually have much influence throughout the story in general, they are really well written. It's really well done. The whole thing is a treat. The whole series is really nice. The action scenes are really good. I don't think I need to say that this is way too violent. I mean, there are some parts that are pretty violent, but they are few and far between. And for the most part, I will stop rambling here and just give some objective things, right? So characters, I think they're awesome. All the designs are really nice. The designs, the ideas, the wishes, the urges and desires, the whole thing really comes together really well. The whole setting, I think it's really nice, really resonates with me in that old 90s aesthetic with some older guns and people are just mad in the city. It's really nice. Also, one of the things that they don't actually use as a crutch, it's more a detail that I really like. The junction of the combination of different nationalities when we talk about the guys that they encounter, or even the way they do stuff. It's really nice. One of the details that I want to bring out is that some of the jokes I think are, and I don't actually remember which volume is this, so I don't actually remember the timing of it, but some of the jokes wouldn't pass on nowadays, I'm pretty sure. It's not so much as a racial slur for the most part, but some of the jokes are kind of insensitive nowadays, let's say. The other thing is, I love the fact that the author is actually a gun nut, so his ideas with guns are really nice. For me, the recurring characters that happen to appear sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes, they're really nice too. The whole thing kind of comes together really well. The other thing, and I need to actually give the shout out to the author himself. He was the character design for, I think the anime is called Bikini Warriors. It's a kind of mini anime. It's a parody of JRPGs or something like that. He, as a character design, is really nice, and retroactively it shows in Black Lagoon, because for the most part the characters use the same clothing for the most part as normal mangas. I say that even though we have Spy Family, but I think Spy Family is more the exception for the rule rather than the rule itself. His sense of style is really nice, and also, right, he's a horny motherfucker, and I have to respect him for it, because whenever, oh my god, there's one of the arcs where it ends with Revi, and this is an ongoing joke kind of thing that the girls at the strip bar want Revi to present because everybody loves her and she doesn't want to do it, but then at the end of this one arc she actually has to do it, and it is some of the most out of this world shit that comes out. It's really nice. And also when they need to use alternate clothing, they are always really stylish, really nice, and it is a detail, but it's a detail that for me I care about. And for the most part, right, what is the objective, my objective evaluation of this whole thing? If you want to read Black Lagoon at face value, it's really nice action. It carries a lot of DNA from B movies. We call B movies nowadays, but it carries a whole lot of things from those old action movies from the 80s and 90s. The one that I always use as an example, even though it's newer than let's say the influence here is Die Hard. I think it carries so much of that DNA, and for me that's really nice. It's really nice action, but I think that in the dialogue and the script and the whole interaction between characters, I think we find a whole lot more to add to this manga. I think the character development and the ideas they throw around are really nice, really good for the reader. It is really difficult discussion to actually have, and for the most part I don't actually want to engage in more platitudes than I already have, but the discussion of freedom of choice and the whole thing I think it's really well done. And they use themselves as examples, and it is an extreme situation they live in, but it is really interesting the way they with this kind of discussion inside of a manga about pirates living off the middle of nowhere with mafia and random stuff happening all the time. It's really interesting. In that regard, I highly recommend Black Lagoon. It's really well done, and for all that's worth, I have so much respect for the author. I found someone actually scanned a special book of 8 pages that he did with all the characters in swimsuits and shorts for the guys, which that alone I thought, oh my god, this is an exclusive thing, and someone found it in the internet and actually scanned for the whole public. Like, oh yes, and the guy like took time off his day to actually draw this thing just to publish one book. Has my respect. A special shout out to Benny's girlfriend that he gets eventually, Jane. I love her design, top notch. And for the most part, I didn't watch the anime, though the soundtrack appears to be nice. I mean, I haven't really listened to all of it, but the soundtrack has more than 10 tracks, and so for me that already poses good things. And that's about it. So before I start rambling more, thank you guys for listening, thank you guys for watching. Please like, please share, please follow depending on the platform you're in, and I hope to see you guys next time. Bye.